So this gun, to sum it up, has a beautiful trigger, a quality action, all kinds of different types of tricks and tips that came from people in the industry who know how to make a reliable and accurate gun. Hello everyone, it's another great day here in North Wales, Pennsylvania at Geissele Automatics. I'm Bill Geissele, and this is Matt Sibio, our Director of Engineering, and we're here to talk about our new bolt gun, the King Hunter. Now, Geissele Automatics is known for its semi-automatic gas guns. My experience as a high-power rifle competitor was always in service rifle competition, and that basically means shooting an M16A2. A civilian AR-15 version of it. I'd never competed with a bolt gun ever in my life. Hunting with a bolt gun, yes, I've done it here in Pennsylvania. In New Jersey, where I'm originally from, you really don't hunt with center fire rifles, okay? It's basically shotgun only for your larger game animals. You could use center fire rifles for groundhogs, but that's about it. So my journey with bolt guns came from my experience, to be quite frank, in being disappointed in what is available on the market and what was available on the market. So one of the first bolt guns I purchased was back in probably the mid-90s. I bought a Remington 700. This was their Sendero model, 308 Winchester with a 26-inch barrel. And I think I paid somewhere north of $900 for this gun, might have been $1,000. And I expected a very accurate long-range gun right out of the box. One of the first things I noted was it didn't have an integral Picatinny on top, so I had to source rings. This was a bit of a struggle. I had to figure out what scope I wanted to get, what height the rings were. And when I finally got it set up with rings, I moved to the trigger before I even shot it, and I said, this trigger is not going to work. So then I pulled the action out of the stock and redid the stock trigger, proceeded to the range. Well, this gun really wouldn't group much better than 2 inches with any type of ammo that I put into it. Federal gold medal match, 168 grain Sierra Match King. It was probably about 1.5 minutes, no better. So I give Remington a call and I send it in. I said, look, there's something wrong with this gun. This is supposed to be a tack driver. And they came back to me and said, well, our standard for our bolt guns is 5 minutes of angle. And I was like, what? Excuse me? So then I went on and tried to get this thing more accurate. All right, I put some of David's Tubbs abrasive coated bullets through it. It seemed to help a little bit. I attempted some amateurish lapping of the barrel. I tried to lap the barrel lugs in, and I noticed that they weren't contacting evenly. I shouldn't say barrel lugs, bolt lugs. They weren't contacting evenly. And I wanted a sub-minute gun. And I worked on this and worked on it and worked on it. And then finally, one day, I shot a 3-round group that was 3/4 of a minute. And I said, I did it, okay? Well, I then promptly sold the gun because it really wasn't 3/4 of a minute. It always shot bigger than an inch, no matter what, after all the work I put into it. So then later on, probably about 5 or so years later, I went into my local gun shop. And there was another Remington 700 on the wall, and this one was a 20-inch police model. Really cool looking gun. Short 20-inch barrel, was fluted, 3 big flutes on it, had a really nice HS precision stock on it, and I said, this is a nice gun, let me pick this up. It wasn't quite as bad as the 26-inch Sendero, but it wasn't great. So again, I proceeded to try to lap the bolt lugs in. I put more David Tubbs bullets through the barrel. I lapped it. And finally, I would say I got a solid 1-inch gun with the best ammo. With standard factory ammo, it was close to 2 inches. But if I reloaded, it would be approximately 1 inch, not much more below that. And that's what I hunted in Pennsylvania for years. And in 2015, I was going to go on a safari to Africa. And I pulled my gun out because I was going to take this 308 there, the The pH said that 308 was fine with certain bullets. And lo and behold, I noticed rust on the outside of the action. And then I looked through the barrel and it was rusty. Now I put it away with oil on it, but being that I live in a standard Pennsylvania home with a damp and wet basement, finally the dampness got to the gun and it was rusted. Also, the aftermarket trigger that I had put into it was gummed up and I wasn't able to get the firing pin to latch onto the trigger. So I looked at this and I didn't have time to mess with this gun. And I bought another gun. This gun was made, if I'm not mistaken, it was made in Finland. And I said, great, this gun is, I think I paid somewhere north of $3,500 for it. Lightweight 308, gonna be wonderful, right? Modern gun. Trigger was half decent. I think this one was adjustable. And then I shot it. It wouldn't shoot any better than 5 inches at 100 yards, no matter what I did. I wound up taking this gun because I didn't have enough time. I managed to be successful with it. The shots were not long. I think my longest shot was about 200 yards. 5 minutes out of a gun that was comparatively expensive. I said, man, this just isn't cool. So down the road, we started to make our own rifle barrels, right? And one of the first ones that I wanted to switch out was my 20-inch Remington police gun, and made a barrel for this guy. So as we took the action apart, took the barrel off the action, one of the things we noticed was that barrel was on there so tight, it wasn't even funny. And when we finally wrenched it off, I had an opportunity to inspect the action. One of the first things I noticed, all right, was the action was bent, all right? Now I knew this from before. So what that means is, you look underneath the action where it fits into the stock, the back tang was bent down. So as you tightened up the screws to the action, it kind of twisted everything into shape. I don't think the action twisted into the stock. I think it twisted the action into the stock. And I had tried to bed this before and it actually made no difference. If anything, the groups were worse after it was bedded. Then I looked at the front of the action and I noticed that the barrel face, the face where the barrel contacts, wasn't machined. Now, in my head, as I look at a bolt gun and I look at the various ways to manufacture it, one of the things that I would do is take your action, and when you clamp it in a CNC lathe, you would go and from that end cut your lug faces, come in and cut your threads and cut the face of the action. And this way, everything, your headspace is going to come out right, your threads are going to be in line with the barrel. That's how you do it. And you know, I'd heard of people blueprinting these Remington actions, and I never really understood it. I'm like, well, that's how they did it when they made it. So, why are they doing all this stuff? I thought it was over the top. Well, the face of this action was cut with an abrasive saw, not a saw like a bandsaw. This was cut with an abrasive saw. The barrel, the stock barrel, was only contacting on 2 points on that receiver. That's it, okay? The threads appeared to be tapped. They weren't even machined into this to make them straight with the end of that receiver. So, blueprinted the action, did the best we could. My teammates, the gunsmith guys, they took the action and trued it all up. And with our barrel on there, it was a solid sub-minute shooter, okay? But to say I was disappointed, okay, in what I received here in quality, I made a resolve that if we were ever going to make a bolt action, this would not be like that. The bolt action that Geissele would make would be a Rolex. A gun that you would be proud to give to your sons and daughters, and that they would be proud to give to their children. So approximately a year or so ago, we were talking to Federal, and they mentioned that they were working on a new cartridge. And that gave us the little kick to start working on our bolt action, and that's what we did. So we've been designing this bolt action for probably a year, a little bit longer, Matt, wouldn't you say? Year and a half, maybe?
Year and a half.
All right. And we designed it around a new Federal cartridge that we'll talk about here in a little bit, all right? But that's where this came up with. There was an opportunity for a brand new cartridge, a cartridge that literally will take the shooting world into the future, okay? This cartridge that Federal designed has many, many advantages, and it's going to be the first of many, all right? I'll play the prophet here and I'll tell you that. The Federal cartridge, this is the first one, 7mm backcountry. There's going to be many more coming through because of the advantages of this. All right, so what was our design inspiration? All right, you know, you talk about that, you talk to musicians, you see musicians and they're being interviewed by somebody and they're like, well, who was your influencer? Who influenced you on your gun? Okay, I knew what I didn't want, all right? I knew we were gonna manufacture it correctly, all right? I knew we wanted to use premium materials. What is the foundation, the bottom of the pyramid? What is that when you start to make a bolt gun? And of course, one of the things we wanted to do is make it Remington 700 stock compatible, okay, which is what we did. So somebody who buys our bolt gun can change the stock out, all right? But I have some very good friends, all right? One of them is Keith Baker, who's a PRS shooter for MDT. And the other one is Jeff Pinehart, who is a bench rest shooter who lives near us in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And he is one of the top rated bench rest shooters in the country. And when I mentioned to these two gentlemen, we're thinking about making a bolt gun, their reaction was both identical, okay? On the line at our PRS matches, at our proving ground up near Tremont, Pennsylvania, the Geissele Proving Ground, Keith Baker said, Bill, this is what you gotta do. You gotta do this, you gotta do that, you gotta do the other. And then you do this, and then you do that. This is the firing pin diameter. This is the spring rate. This is how you do this, blah, blah, blah. He did a data dump on me. And I was busy typing on my phone all these things that I realized were from his experience. Jeff Pinehart, when I told him about this, he's like, Bill, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, you gotta do the other. You gotta do this thing, and that thing, and the other thing, and this thing. Okay, but he's a bench rester, okay? How many of us really shoot bench rest, all right? When I say us, I'm talking to my friends in the AR-15 gas gun crowd, all right? I don't think I've ever met one that has shot bench rest. Well, let me tell you something. You think it's an old man FUD sport, really isn't. It's highly, highly technical, and these guys have gone through decades and decades and decades of iteration on how to make your gun shoot correctly. And then Keith Baker and Jeff Pinehart, all this experience was right in their heads, and all they did was tell me what to do. And that was our foundation for our gun. Precision PRS and bench rest. And we took those types of things and we put them into that bolt gun. Now, you might know or not know this, but we were recently awarded the MRGG-S award for SOCOM. This is our 20-inch Joy, that's our code name, internal code name, of a 20-inch semi-automatic rifle. It's 6.5 Creedmoor and 308 Winchester. From the development of this gun, because the standard of accuracy on this solicitation was under 1 minute consistently.
With a gas gun.
With a gas gun, all right, and with service rifle ammunition. That's not reloaded, tuned ammunition. We were able to achieve that through years of iteration, of engineering iteration. Iteration means you make small changes in order to improve something, okay? We're human beings. The Lord speaks things into existence. Let there be light, and there was light. We don't do that. We have the things on this earth, we design something, and then we make changes to it. Look at the cars back in 1920, the Model T, all right? You might not know this, but there were a lot of hills in the United States that a Model T wasn't able to get up, all right, because of its gearing. My dad told me that if you couldn't get up a hill with a Model T, you would go up it in reverse because reverse was lower. Well, we don't have that issue now, right? Well, it's because of design, engineering, iteration. And so here we are, and with all the experience that multitudes of people have done with bolt guns, and especially my two friends, we have put that all into one package. Now, going back to our MRGGS, sub-minute accuracy consistently. 10 round groups. We have taken testing of these guns, and with 100 guns, we had a group of guns where the average accuracy was, Matt?
0.6 MOA.
0.6 out of approximately 100 guns, all right? And that accuracy, sub-minute, can continue to over 6,000 rounds on a barrel, on one of our Geissele barrels, all right? Why did that happen? It's because of iteration, and I'm going to give you a little symbol to understand what we are as Geissele, and that's the Greek letter sigma, all right? You may not be familiar with this. If you're driving behind somebody who's maybe in a sorority or fraternity, you'll see on their license plate a bunch of Greek letters. Well, this one looks like an E, all right? Looks like this. Instead of the E going down like this, it comes over, comes down at a triangle, another triangle comes down. That's the Greek letter sigma. What does summation mean? It means to add it all up, okay? Yeah. Me and Matt have gone through 5 semesters of calculus. We saw it all the time. Summation, add it all up. That's what Geissele's about. All the little things that might seem innocuous and doesn't mean anything, but if you keep going and keep going and keep going, it starts out little, and then you actually have something in your hand that is like the El Presidente Rolex that people look at and they say, that's a nice watch. That thing works, it keeps time, etc. That's exactly what we tried to do here. We tried to make that gun the best that we possibly could with making small changes that we learned from MRGG and from experts in the competition world. We brought that into a hunting gun. I hope that this is going to be the first of many too. All right, it's not a short action, it's a long action gun, not a Magnum, bolt face. All right, but I hope that there'll be other guns that follow along this down the road. All right, so let's go into some of the features. What makes this gun different than other bolt guns out there? All right, first thing, we'll start at one end, we'll go down to the other. First thing is our muzzle device right there. All right, that muzzle device is compatible with Huck's suppressors. All right, it's made out of stainless steel, it's nitrided, and it's a different design than what you see on most Huck's muzzle devices. This is actually a muzzle brake, and it mates up perfectly with a Huck suppressor. So the gun is suppressor ready. Moving to the barrel. That is a Geissele barrel. Not a Geissele barrel where we bring in a barrel blank from, a mass-produced barrel blank, all right, and then we just turn it and profile it, which a lot of people say they make barrels. No, this barrel comes in giant bundles of stainless steel that generally come from Europe. The stainless steel generally comes from Europe. It's 416R. The steel is double heat treated, okay? It's cyanogenically treated. Every barrel is in liquid nitrogen for hours in order to transform the internal metallurgical structure of it and make it stable. That's the big thing about our barrels. That's how it starts out. And we gun drill it, we ream it, and we cut rifle it here in North Wales, Pennsylvania. We do it ourselves. Our cut riflers are not these old machines that look like somebody built in their garage or some World War I Pratt & Whitney machine that has been rebuilt. These are CNC cut riflers that we designed and made here in our factory. We have our tooling so closely defined that we are ecstatic about the quality of our barrels. We've realized that much of accuracy comes from the quality of your barrels. How straight you gun drill, your finish after reaming. Cut rifle starts with a stabilized piece of stainless steel that's heat treated already, and you shave off little shavings for each groove that are only 1/10,000th of an inch thick. It makes an absolutely perfect rifling through this with very, very good finish. And because of this, it's naturally accurate. And that's the barrel that's in this. A 7mm twist is
1
1 1/8. We make right here in our factory. You'll notice the contour, comparatively a mid-weight contour. It's not fluted, okay? Doesn't look super space age. I'm on the fence with fluting. I think it adds nothing all right? If you want a lighter barrel, just make the diameter smaller. It does look cool, I get it, all right? You'll also notice that it's not carbon wrapped. I have not been able to convince myself to go down that route because the carbon wrap barrels that I have shot are basically good for 3 shots before the groups start opening up due to heat, okay? Maybe we'll get into it one day and try to solve that issue, all right? But this is a mid-weight stainless steel barrel. We move to the stock, and I'll let Matt talk about the stock.
All right, so the stock is a Manners long-range hunter stock, and it's in a custom camo pattern that is specifically for us for this rifle. So you can get this stock on the open market, but you can't get this exact one. It's got an adjustable comb, so it is set up to be a long-range hunting rifle that is adjustable. It's not adjustable on the fly, but you can take out the spacers and adjust it and set it up for you when you buy it. When it comes out of the box, it's going to have 2 attachment points for a sling in the front, 1 in the back. It's also going to come in the box with a little Picatinny rail that can be bolted on as well. In this configuration, so you guys could see it, we just have it up on a Harris bipod. There's a couple of different things that come with it, which we can get into as we move down the rest of the gun. But as far as the stock goes, that's the basics. It's got QD inserts on both sides, both ends, left and right. It's a really nice, comfortable stock to shoot.
It's a beautiful stock. When we saw the stock, we knew we had to have it for our gun, which, by the way, the action is called the high pressure model, and the gun overall is called the King Hunter. That's the name of it. We're talking King Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
and it's all carbon, too.
And it's all carbon fiber. We move to the action itself. So my youngest boy, he's 11, and we're really into the 6R cartridge here, and we built him a bolt gun to hunt with. And we did that last year. In Pennsylvania, you can't hunt deer with a semi-automatic rifle. You can only hunt coyotes, groundhogs, crows, things like that with a semi-automatic.
Basically any varmint.
Okay. We went hunting this year, and there was some moisture out there. And, I don't generally lube a hunting rifle a lot because I don't want all that smelly oil all over the gun that the deer can smell. Yeah, I know that's kind of, nitpicky, but it's not a good thing to do on a hunting gun. Well, after hunting season, noticed that action started to rust. It's a carbon steel action. It's probably chromoly, right? And it's blued. And if you don't slather oil on a blued action, it's going to rust. The blue does nothing for corrosion resistant. It just makes it look black. So what we did is we decided to make it out of stainless steel. This stainless steel is 15-5 stainless steel. All right, what's that mean? You might have heard of 17-4 stainless. You'll hear actions made out of 4140, 416.
Really, that's probably mostly it.
That's probably most of what you
some
have.
chromoly, possibly.
Yeah. So what is 15-5? 15-5 is a precipitation hardening stainless steel. What that means, it does not get its hardness from the carbon absorption into the atomic structure that you see on a high carbon type chromoly steel. Because of this, it does not distort in heat treating. So 15-5 is what we chose for this. Extremely corrosion resistant. It's able to be hardened. It's also able to be cut in the hardened state. So before we start machining anything on the block of steel that we use, that stainless steel is already at the correct hardness. So we don't go and machine it and then heat treat it afterwards. If you're using a carbon steel, it'll do just like what the Remington action did. All right, that bar that they used was straight in the beginning, but they machine it soft and then heat treat it so it warps. We didn't want that. It's machined in a heat treated condition, and 15-5 is a stronger material than 17-4. That's what we chose. It's machined out of a solid block of stainless. The Picatinnies on top are integral. They're machined into it. The recoil lug is machined integral into the receiver. It has a bolt stop here on this side. You'll notice kind of like a standard feature of standard PRS guns, very heavy duty and easy to manipulate bolt stop. Come here to the bolt. And you'll notice this large bolt head right here, okay? The bolt head is also separate. This bolt head is made out of S7 steel. S stands for shock resistant. That's where that S stands for. This is the kind of steel you'll see used in bits for jackhammers, all right? Or some type of an impact tool that's taking impact. Very strong, all right? This bolt head is 2 lugs. You'll notice what I just did. I turned that one on the bottom. So it's a 2-lug 90-degree action. The extractor is an M16 type, and it has a standard plunger ejector right there. You'll also notice the taper on this end. The barrel is cone shaped on the end. It is not flat. And the reason we did that is I've always been concerned that if for some reason I have to toss around into the chamber and I'd run out of rounds in my magazine, I always want to be able to chamber around and run the bolt home. And if you have a flat bolt face, which is very popular in a lot of PRS guns, because it's easy for the home machinist with his manual and basic lathes in order to make a flat face on it, okay? It's not that easy to make the cone face on a manual machine. The round will go into the chamber much easier than if you put it and not put it in the magazine. That's why it has a coned bolt face on this. You'll notice this thing that turns right here. You'll see some other guns out there, all right? This was patented in the early 1960s from Savage, all right? What is this thing right here? Well, Savage calls it a baffle, all right? Well, as a baffle and it turns, one of the reasons this is here is as you're cycling the gun, this makes an effective longer bolt head right here. And that bolt head runs in channels in your receiver. If you make it longer, there's a lot less tendency of the gun, of the bolt to tilt like this and jam up. I think that's why they did it back in the early 60s. I can't really tell. Why did we do it? We call this action a high pressure model. Even though, as we found out, the federal cartridge did not necessarily need some of the things we did for it, this shutter, we don't call it, this baffle we now call a shutter. And that means that there is no pathway from here to the back of the action. So when you're locked up, there is almost a 100% seal going back toward the shooter with this shutter right there. If you didn't have this, this is turned, it's locked in like this, and if our shutter wasn't here, if anything happened out here, there'd be a clear pathway for the gases to get back to the shooter, all right? This is a big problem on some guns, like the Italian Carcano, all right? That is an eyeball popper, all right? If anything goes wrong with your cartridge here, you're gonna get gas shooting back through your firing pin and through the action right into your eye. We attempted to take as much of that out as possible with this unique type shutter that we have. Bolt head is floating. Why do we do that? And the answer is this. When you have your bolt in the action and there's clearance around this, you can make the bolt sit a lot straighter by decreasing your clearance around the bolt body to the receiver. But if you go below a certain value and you're in an abrasive environment, you will start to bind that bolt. So you can't make it tight. If you make it tight, you're going to sacrifice reliability. So we have an appropriate clearance right here, but with the floating bolt head, the bolt will now be able to have some compliance to it, and both lugs will bear evenly in the receiver. If you have a one-piece bolt, you're going to have to deal with that bolt being unloaded from one to the other, because just because there's compliance and the bottom of the striker is now jacking the back of the bolt up, all right? There's no way to get around it. Having a flat lug to lug contact even across it is one of the things in our Sigma, add it all up, makes a big difference in accuracy. You go into the internal part of the bolt, there's a lot of engineering mumbo jumbo that goes into this, all right? That Jeff Pinghart said, do this, do that, don't do this with the spring, don't do that with the firing pin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are all things that have been understood throughout decades of bench rest competition about what makes good ignition on the primer. In 2004, when I showed the Army Marksmanship Unit my high-speed trigger at Camp Perry, the very first words out of the head gunsmith there, Gene Clark, as he looked at it was, what hammer spring does it use? And I said, well, it uses an M16A1 hammer spring. I mean, I make it myself, but the spring is basically that design torque. He said, that's good, because we'll never put any trigger in our guns that have any type of a compromised hammer spring. It leads to inaccuracy. We've proven it. The ignition of your primer is of paramount importance, and all these little nuances are incorporated into the Geissele high pressure model bolt. Your shroud, made out of stainless steel and nitrided. You'll notice this unique feature underneath. It's a roller on the cocking piece. So as it goes forward, that the influence of the receiver guiding the firing pin forward is minimized. Any rubbing there is minimized on this. So we've taken all those things and put it in here. Now, the bolt handle. All right, Matt's laughing. Well, I like these phenolic knobs. They're the kind of control knobs that you'll see on hydraulic systems, such as a bulldozer or some type of earth moving equipment. It's phenolic, it's not plastic. It's a thermoset resin. It won't melt. I love these. I love how they feel. It's not cold on your hands, but my teammate engineers roundly criticize me for my old man FUD bolt handle that's sitting here, okay? They actually made one that was the new modern design with all kinds of flats and features and very rad and trick looking and space age. And I said, take it off that gun right now. I said, I want that round bolt handle. But as I'm learning, I have to be flexible and not so stubborn. So we do have a rad bolt handle, all right, which my younger teammates designed, and the gun is going to come with that rad bolt handle. So when you look at this thing here and you say, ah, that's terrible, horrible, whatever, how could Geissele put a plastic bolt knob on it? Well, you're going to get a trick one with the gun, and you can switch it out if you want. The bolt is one piece here where the knob attaches. This piece right here is integral to the bolt body. So you just have a stem, and then you have your knob on top. You'll be able to switch it out for different handles as we move along. We have one now, we'll have some more later on. All right, we now move into the trigger. This trigger is our Super 700 bolt gun trigger. We designed this 4 or 5 years ago, maybe.
Probably almost 6 at this
All right.
point, honestly. Yeah.
The reason we started to design this is we had a request from a military customer for a bolt gun trigger that was drop safe. And what I expected is that bolt gun triggers are drop safe. We have to make our triggers drop safe, and they drop it from 5 feet onto concrete or onto a 1-inch thick steel plate. And you take the safety off, you drop it in all these different directions, down, up, and the gun can't go off. Well, actually that doesn't happen with military bolt guns. And they told me is that, oh, you have to put the safety on when you do the drop test. I'm like, put the safety on? Well, you're not making me do it with our Super Duties. Why do you do this? They're like, oh, well, no trigger will pass it with the safety off. And there's a lot of them that won't pass it with the safety on. The genesis for our Super 700 was a precise 2-stage pull that is also drop safe. One of the key things with this trigger is it doesn't have a small sear engagement. Just like our renowned triggers for the AR-15, it's 2-stage and you have large sear engagement. You are not sitting on a knife edge. Just about every other trigger out there that I've ever seen sits on the knife edge. Whether it has rollers, whether it has balls, whatever it is, it's sitting on some kind of a knife edge. Do you want to have your trigger sitting on a knife edge while you're out walking around with your kids? All right, yeah, you're not going to point at your gun at anything you don't want to destroy, but what if you trip? Okay, that makes me uncomfortable. And that's why we have a large sear engagement. And when you pull the trigger, the sear engagement comes to the end. It's much safer to have things that way, all right? Working out all these forces and the finishes on everything took us a long time. When we released the trigger, it's really nice. We sold them, but the trigger is extremely expensive to make. And over the last several years, we haven't been making these triggers. Well, now we fired up the production line again. I've sat there and looked at these 2 vertical machining centers that are robot loaded that makes the housing for this. And every time I go by it, I'm looking, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to figure out something for those things to do. Well, now they're humming again. And this has our Super 700 trigger. It is 2-stage. If you're a single stage person, trust me, you will learn to love this trigger, okay? It's like eating sushi, okay? I'm not eating raw fish, okay? Until the first time you try it, and you're like, this is pretty good. That's what you're gonna find with this. So this gun, to sum it up, has a beautiful trigger, a quality action, all kinds of different types of tricks and tips that came from people in the industry who know how to make a reliable and accurate gun. Now, I want to show you something here. These are some targets that are shot by myself and Jeff Peenhart. Now, this is not our barrel, all right, but it's one of our first receivers. And the test here was to see if Jeff needed to work and fit our action to make it accurate, all right? Because every action that he's ever used, he has to go through it and true up the threads or true up the shoulder where the barrel goes on, or true up the locking lunge, or do this. Even in the very expensive ones that he uses, he will not get winning accuracy out of any bolt gun receiver he's ever used unless he went and did some magic to it. We took our receiver right off the milling machine, we screwed a known accurate barrel to it, and these groups right here, I shot the first one, that's 7 rounds, 0.151. He shot the next, that's 10, 0.115. All right, then he shot this one, that's 10, 0.180. This one, Jeff's son shot, quarter minute, right here, actually lower, it's 0.250. What these groups show is that our action, as we designed it, is inherently accurate. You put an inherently accurate and well-machined barrel on it, and now you have a gun that is not going to be your standard 1 inch, 1.5 inch. This 7mm Backcountry right here consistently shoots under 1 inch. Generally, it's around 1/2 inch. That's in a hunting gun. This isn't a PRS gun that weighs 26 pounds, all right? This isn't an bench rest gun that has a 4-ounce trigger that you don't even touch the gun, you pull it like this. This is in a hunting gun. So you get everything in one package. You get your reliability, you get your accuracy, you get the performance of Federal and their technology. And I'll turn this over to Matt now, and he'll talk a little bit about the 7mm Backcountry.
Okay. Let me finish up with the gun and what comes with it real quick.
Sure.
Before we jump into the ammo. So I talked about the stock. It's going to come with the brake that Bill already described. It's also going to come with a thread protector if you decide you don't want to shoot it with a brake. We do recommend the Flow 762 titanium. That's what we run on these when we shoot them. It has an AICS standard bottom metal, so any long action 30-06 mag, you can run it in here. It is going to come with a 5-round PMag in the box, and that's, I think, the extent of it, and the other knob that Bill was describing earlier. A little bit about Backcountry. So it officially launched to the public on the 7th. Probably if you're a gun person, a hunter, follow anybody on social media, you probably see it all over your newsfeed right now, coming from Federal, from us, and from some other manufacturers as well. As far as the technology goes, it's what they call peak alloy. So the biggest thing you're going to want to take from that is you can take a cartridge that's this size. If you were to take this cartridge in the exact same format, let's just, for comparative speaking, say it's like a 30-06 size cartridge, and load this into a brass case. you can't get as much velocity out of it. That's the whole idea behind this technology. And Federal is going to be putting out a lot of videos on this, and there's going to be a lot more content coming this week on what this does. We've been shooting it now for, how long ago? We've been shooting this, a couple months now, at least. I actually did take down a whitetail here in Pennsylvania with one last month, so that was pretty awesome. And as Bill alluded to, they are going to be working on some other cartridges as well. The big advantage of this is you're going to see major velocity increases over what you would expect out of a package like this. Bill, I think you actually have those written down here.
Yep.
So you want to talk about those quick?
So in relative terms to your standard Magnum bolt face cartridges, okay, which 7mm PRC, 7mm Remington Magnum, you're going to get out of the Federal 7mm Backcountry, you're going to get more velocity, you're going to get less recoil, you're going to get increased magazine capacity and efficient use of shorter barrels. Okay, so when we say more velocity, the 7mm Remington Magnum was the cartridge back in the early 1970s. My dad dreamed of taking his Remington 700 ADL out west to go elk hunting. Sadly, he was never able to do that before he passed on. But that was his dream to do that. That was the cartridge, all right, the Magnum cartridge. Backcountry is 300 feet per second faster than 7mm Remington Mag with the equivalent length barrel. For 7mm PRC, which is a more modern cartridge, it's 200 feet per second faster, equivalent length barrel. With a non-Magnum bolt face, you're now able to fit more rounds into a magazine of the same length. Now, it's generally only one round or so, but there's probably situations when you hunt where that one round might be the difference between bagging the animal or not. So you get increased magazine capacity. But with Federal's Peak alloy, steel alloy, they're able to use different powders that burn better in shorter barrels. So what the intention is that you can get equivalent velocity with a shorter barrel than your legacy type cartridges, okay? Same length barrel, 24 inches, all right, you're gonna get more velocity. But you can shorten this up, and instead of something that's spewing out all kinds of unburnt powder with your standard slow burning powders, their gunpowder makes efficient use of shorter barrels. So you'll notice that ours is a 20-inch barrel. That's the same length barrel in that police gun that I purchased 25 years ago, that I said, wow, that's a really short barrel. And M14 has a 22-inch barrel in a 308. Here we have this higher powered cartridge in a 20-inch barrel. Some of our next versions are going to be 16-inch. This 20-inch barrel will launch a 170 grain projectile at 3,050 feet per second. So now, instead of a cumbersome 24-inch, 26-inch long barrel, you're going to be out there and getting the performance out of the shorter barrels, okay? Sum it up, you get more velocity, less recoil, increased magazine capacity, and you're able to use shorter barrels more efficiently. Now, some of the other advantages of the steel case, all right, this is a big one, is integrity of your primer pocket. Now, we associate steel case with cheap ammunition that would come from, let's say, Russia or China or something like that. The Germans, I believe, were the first ones who really started using steel case in World War II, and that was because of their lack of copper and their need in order to use steel cases, because they didn't have the copper for your brass cartridges. These steel cases were problematic, especially in the MG42 machine gun, and a lot of these German machine gunners would shoot the steel case. They'd have spare barrels because the cartridges would get stuck, but they always had an emergency belt of brass right there in case this was their last belt and they absolutely needed to have it. They didn't have the best reputation, all right? So then we move into Soviet times, and of course the Soviets had access to the German engineers, and they developed steel cases for their cartridges, and they've done a good job at it, all right? Their cases are lacquered, they're painted a certain way, they're corrosion resistant, they work actually pretty well. But this is a little bit different. This has a much stronger tensile strength to the steel, and it's for handling higher pressures, 80,000 PSI or even more. That's what this 7mm backcountry is the first of. We're at SHOT Show here. Come by our booth. You're gonna see King Hunter. You'll be able to handle it. Go over to the Federal booth. They're also gonna have one of our King Hunters there. Please feel free to look at it. And I think any of you first adopters of our gun, you're gonna be extremely happy with what you get. You're buying a Rolex. We're gonna deliver a Rolex. It's gonna be backed by Rolex customer service. You're gonna be extremely happy. And this is a rifle that you would be proud to hand to your descendants. So signing off from North Wales, Pennsylvania, Bill Geissele and Matt Sibio. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in Las Vegas in a couple weeks.